мною принято решение о проведении специальной военной операции.
Today at 1, we're live in Ukraine as Russia invades in a major military assault by land, sea and air.
It's now more than a month since the US Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, visited Taiwan. China's ambassador to Australia also issued a blunt warning a few days ago that those who push for Taiwanese independence will be punished.
We're waiting for a peaceful reunification, but we cannot rule out other options.
You won't have to do it anymore. 4 more years, you know what? It'll be fixed, it'll be fine. You won't have to vote anymore.
This is why we fight. Democracy is at war. Across the world, we see the forces rallied against it. From the authoritarian regimes of Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea to techno-aristocrats, religious fundamentalists, and populist demagogues. In the battlefields of Ukraine to the Straits of Taiwan and the halls of power in the United States, democratic, free values are under determined assault. But there are those who resist. They are activists, journalists, academics, soldiers, religious leaders, and politicians. In this series, we will meet those who claim to be fighting for a free world. We will find out who they are, how they're involved in the struggle, what democracy means to them, and why it's worth fighting for.
Welcome to this episode of Why We Fight. I am very privileged to be sitting here today at the Estonian Embassy in Kyiv with Ambassador Annely Kolk. Madam Ambassador, thank you very much for speaking with me.
Thank you very much for interest in Estonian news and also for doing your job, for showing the world what is actually happening, what is important, and why we are fighting for Ukraine, like you said.
That leads me perfectly on to my first question. Thank you. As the Estonian ambassador to Ukraine, what does the war in Ukraine represent to you? Not just politically, but morally and historically.
Well, to be honest, it represents everything that I didn't believe for 30 years. I was also living during the Soviet occupation. I know exactly what it meant. And then we regained the independence and struggled really to get to the European Union, to the NATO, studied human rights, all these democratic principles. And it's just, I mean, if you haven't lived under the occupation or dictatorship, you don't actually know what does it mean if you can freely speak your language, have your traditions, and not be afraid of your opinion. So for me, when already 2014, when Russia annexed Crimea, Donetsk and Luhansk, it was huge shock, to be honest. And then of course Estonia from the day one started to help Ukraine, especially because we knew that it's not only, I mean, it's the war, it's the lives of people, but it's all about the rule-based world order that we have actually built since the end of Second World War. In 21st century, and you can imagine, again, this is happening. I mean, it happened 2008 in Georgia, Syria, all around the world. But because it was really like our neighbor country attacked brutally another country, then it was really a shock.
Why is it so important that you, as an Estonian, and that other Estonians, be they volunteers, be they volunteer soldiers, or politicians and foreign service workers like yourself, are here supporting Ukraine?
Especially because we are supporting the democracy, the rule of law, the freedom. The freedom is really dear if you have to fight for it. And I should say that it's not even about that Russia is our neighbor and we are afraid of. It's just we know what Russia is capable of. And we all remember the history. We had deportations, mass murders from the Soviet rulers, and then it's just, you know, you come here to protect all of this, all that you believe, and it could be whatever, another country, we would do the same.
Estonia has been one of Ukraine's most firm backers and allies. Why do you think your country has taken such a firm stance, and when larger nations have dithered and hesitated?
I think the same reason, because we have lived under the occupation, and many Western countries have not witnessed these atrocities. We lived under the Iron Curtain, so not many people know what actually was going on, you know, in the occupied territories, and also people in schools didn't study the history as it was, and so I think that that's why we knew from the beginning that this is going to be very, very dangerous for the democracy, and if we let Russia to conquer even, you know, 1 kilometer, or if we don't act, and if we don't, and it also means that there always has to be somebody who is brave enough for, you know, showing the way, that, and talking and talking and talking, and so I guess that's the, and also there is I think everybody feels it in their hearts, and so it's not difficult to help Ukraine.
How much, from your knowledge of what's happening in the temporarily occupied areas of Ukraine, how much does that mirror what happened in Estonia's history?
It does mirror a lot. I remember when I was a kid, and we had these family gatherings, and we closed the curtains, and then grandparents talked the stories who were sent to Siberia, and my grandfather was in prison because he was rich. I mean, he wasn't rich, but kulaks they called. Yeah. My father was basically raised alone, just trying to, you know, find. He didn't have home. He was running through the forest to find mushrooms, and so it all, you know, it all really struck you, and so we know all the stories, and but I think that that now what is happening on the occupied territories by the Russian occupied territories, I think it's even more brutal, because when I see also how the war is dragging on, and also how they are attacking civilians, thus I'm very much afraid, and everything that I hear also from the reports and the NGOs, that the situation there is really, really harder, I'm afraid, and I feel so sorry for the people who are living there, who cannot escape, and also what because the Soviet Union, you know, there were many Soviet republics, and Estonia, as we were on the sort of borderline, we still had many leaders. Mm-hmm. And we could manage somehow. We, you know, 1.3 million, we still have our own language, and we managed to, but now when I read the reports from the occupied territories that they are, you know, there are military schools for Ukrainian kids, where they are taught, you know, the Russia is empire, and they are really teaching the kids to fight against their own native land, their own relatives. So I think it's even more brutal, and even more like unbelievable what is going on there.
Given that, is there anything more that other European nations, particularly the large Western European nations, could be doing to defend Ukraine, and if so, what is it?
Well, I should say that actually I'm very proud that the European Union has really been united and strong, and we have this, already 17 sanction packages. They're already working on 18th, and it's 27 member states. It's not that easy, but really, Europe has helped, and since this year, European leaders have said that we are really ramping up the support, and but of course there are some countries who don't have this past and who are far from the front line, and so I think this is why it's important also for the Baltics and Poland and these border countries, or those who have been occupied, to raise our voice and to show the examples, and also we don't have colonial history, so we are also we can talk around the world that because if you go even out, even Europe, but outside Europe, nobody knows about the occupation, and there was this non-recognition policy, but we still couldn't have our traditions, sing our songs. We were still put in a prison when we were singing these Estonian nationalist songs. So this is why we are really actively talking, and
I want to speak to you about music in a bit, because I know it's very important
Yes.
to Estonian culture. But briefly, just another policy question. The approximately $200 billion of frozen Russian assets in Europe. What's your position on what we should do with those?
well, we already adopted last year the law in Parliament to use Russian frozen assets, not only the profits, but the frozen assets. And we have had many meetings, workshops, when we are telling our European Union partners that it is possible under the European Union law. And we have been advocating for that a lot. Of course, in our country, we don't have many Russian frozen assets. But if we show the example that it is possible under the international law, European Union law, and also the same question is that as the war has been already almost, its fourth year, and we have really, helped Ukraine financially. We have, reconstructed, and then there is a question: why don't we use the aggressors' money to do all this already now? That's also the question, which I hope that maybe the taxpayers in European countries also start thinking that we have huge amounts of Russian frozen assets, and we can use this to rebuild Ukraine, because it's Russian damages.
Yeah.
We are not using them for our own profit, but especially, to help Ukraine. But of course, it's good that at least we use the profits from the frozen assets at least, and now it's for the military. But it's again, it's like you said, it's political will.
Onto sort of a global picture. We're seeing global pushback against democracy. Georgia, Mali, even parts of the West itself. What lessons can Estonia teach other countries about rebuilding democracy from the ashes?
Well, there are really many lessons, and I think one of them is that you have this since the Estonia proclaimed its independence, the country, and we all had this flame inside us, and it was given from generation to generation, that actually, like I said, you can freely speak, and you can criticize the government, constructively, and and if you have lived under that for 50 years, the more dear it is to you, and these are the lessons, I guess, that we are trying to tell the world that. And of course, it's like I said, I mean, for me, it's still shocking that we have the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. We have built upon the United Nations, the OSCE, the Council of Europe, and all for the, human rights, democracy, rule of law. And now it seems that so easily it can be diminished by one aggressor state for no reason.
Do you think that Europe squandered the peace dividend after the end of the Cold War and didn't invest enough in defense after the end of the Cold War and the collapse of the USSR?
I think so, yes. Yeah, I think so, because everybody was hopeful that now there will be a big happy family and we have Russian Federation, and to be honest, in the beginning, yes, we had they recognized us as the independent state, and but from time, when the time passed, we in Estonia, we started to see the signs that the imperialistic dreams of the previous Soviet Union, they have not disappeared, and they were like smoothly and step by step building again, and now we know that Russian Federation and unfortunately also the people, they cannot accept that the big Russian Empire was collapsed in 1991, and they still think that we are one, and it's big Russia, and we all should be part of it, and there are only just some barking Baltics or whatever states who are just temporarily want to be different. But this understanding, I'm afraid, what I have learned since the 2014 and especially after the full-scale war, that it's really deep in their minds, in their roots, and which is
tragic.
Alarming. Mm-hmm.
Tragic. Is there any way to negotiate with a country like this, and if so, what is it?
Well, we have seen for the last 15 years all the negotiations, how many of them were. We had Minsk agreements, but the other part, he doesn't honor its obligations. It's just, for my personal thinking, they're just trying to buy the time. Yes, they sign something, then they realize that maybe, they always find the excuses. They never blame themselves or say, okay, maybe we. So it's negotiations, as you think, between two adult and peace-loving countries are different than when you are negotiating with the brutal enemy, who is just, we witness it right now. They are just buying the time, and I think the only way to end this war with the Ukrainian victory is really to defeat Russia economically, so they don't. They will understand that the war doesn't pay off. So this is why I know there are many critics that the sanctions don't work, but still it is a tool, and we have to use all the tools, and of course arm Ukraine to the teeth, so they could protect their country, but also every other revenue. And Estonia was also one of the countries after the full-scale war when we started isolate Russia from international organizations and from everywhere, because we say that the aggressor state cannot have a place in the table, when we are talking about democracy. But this, of course, is the Security Council, and one of the aggressors being the permanent member of that. But this is not in our, but that's why we are doing whenever we can see that this is the revenue or we should use this or that. But to negotiate, I mean, of course, every war ends at one day and it ends at the negotiation table. But just we have to be very cautious what will be negotiated and how much we can trust or start rebuilding or based on the Russia's real aims and readiness.
I've heard the phrase, I believe it was from a Lithuanian politician, you can only negotiate with Russia with a gun on the table. Do you echo that sentiment?
Yes.
And how do you respond to those in countries which don't border Russia? They are tired of funding the war in Ukraine, or who frame it as a regional conflict rather than a conflict about global norms?
Well, that makes me really, still makes me not angry anymore, but I mean, how can people in their homes, when they don't have war, in their comfortable sofas, tell that they are tired of supporting Ukraine? I don't understand that. I mean, and I think it should be clear to everybody right now, when you listen to the Russian leaders, to all these war propagandists, that Ukraine is not their aim. Yes, they want to, you know, this is a pure genocide they are doing here, but the whole Europe is there. Okay, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but it's not that it's, and I also hate this, like Ukrainian-Russian conflict. No, Russia invaded Ukraine, and but I think it's more that we have to talk, still keep talking and showing pictures and, you know, what is really happening, and also to show them more, you know, what the Russians are talking and what the propagandists are talking, and they're saying that, you know, this or that capital is our next target, and it doesn't come like from underground spheres. You know, they're publicly talking about that in public broadcast.
Yeah.
So I think how many wake-up calls do we need? I think that yes, Czechia, Georgia, 2014, Crimea. I think we all have had these wake-up calls, and it's a little bit pity that we haven't still woken from that, and we still need to convince close partners that, you know, there is so much at stake here in Ukraine. It's really the democracy, rule of law, freedom, everything.
We're talking about Russia's next targets. It's generally agreed that Estonia would be one of their next targets. How much hybrid war and interference do you see in Estonian life from the Russians?
Well, Russians have always used, you know, propaganda. You know, they are spending billions of the rubles to the propaganda. They have done it for the past 20 years, 15 years, and also the you know, the hybrid war against us and also other European countries. But regarding this question, you know, is Estonia next, or I still hope that, you know, we are a member of the European Union, we are a member of NATO. NATO is really the strongest military alliance in this part of the world, and that's why we struggled in the beginning of 90s to become the members of European Union, NATO. That's why we also now very publicly and very strongly advocate that Ukraine, you know, should be also become the part of NATO, because, like I said, Russia is afraid of force, and so far Russia has never attacked NATO countries. Yes, this hybrid, but we should, should be aware of that and should fight with that. But I think that the NATO stands strong. This is also why we have to fight together with Ukraine or help Ukraine as much as possible. So there is no appetite, and that they will be defeated here. So there is no question anymore. Is Estonia next? Is Latvia next? Is Finland next? That's my belief.
How do you respond to the line the Kremlin often puts out, but also the line that sort of Western talking heads often put out, that Russia was provoked, that there was a promise that there would be no NATO expansion, and that NATO expansion was an existential threat to Russia?
But this is exactly what we are talking. It's against democracy. No country should have any right to say about its neighbor or whoever country which alliances it may join, or so. Why do we think that Russia has a say? What alliances can Estonia join, or Ukraine, or I don't know, Luxembourg? It doesn't matter that your neighbor. You are not. There's no right. I mean, this is all what democracy or human rights are about. This is all what we have built. That countries are sovereign, and nobody has the right to violate that or have some opinion, of course, but have some saying or veto right. No.
On to Ukraine again. What does winning, in your eyes, look like for Ukraine? Not just in military terms, but of course in military terms, but in terms of democratic consolidation and the resilience of Ukrainian society?
Well, I think Ukrainians have also went through a massive shock over the 11 years, and you see how much they want to become the members of European family, European Union, the NATO. So I think that the victory for Ukraine also means that they are in European Union, in NATO, that they are really in the democratic family, and this is what they are also fighting for right now. And this is how the 2014 started. Yeah. Because Ukraine wanted to choose the European path, and then the barbaric neighbor decided that no, they have something to say about that.
Policy questions keep on popping into my mind. I just have to ask them. A European army, what's your view on that? An integrated European armed forces?
Well, it's a difficult question, because European Union was established as the economic union, to be honest. And then over the years, yes, the defense policy has taken also some more ground inside the European Union. But there is also this that very many European Union countries are members of the NATO. So we have NATO. I mean, so European army, I think I think it's not the question of very close future. I think we should more focus on strengthening NATO. Like now we are, everybody is raising their expenditures on the defense. Estonia has also said that our goal is 5% of GDP, and which also means that inside NATO, inside Europe, countries are also strengthening themselves. Unfortunately, this is where we are after all these universal declarations of human rights and everything, and Geneva Conventions. But as for European army, I think it's most important that countries at first protect their own and build their capabilities, and of course at the same time support Ukraine as much as possible, because we don't need these shells today, but Ukraine needs them. So let's give them. And
I want to ask a bit now about you and your values. You've dedicated your life to service. Why?
Because my parents were huge patriots of Estonia, and I've been taught from a child, you know, how important it is that you have your own country and you have your own language, and you have rights. And that's what triggered me to. I started with the human rights, which was fascinating, because during the Soviet time in schools, you know, nobody told that we have, you know, we have rights. We had only obligations. And then of course it's a little bit, of course, patriotism as well. You know, you give everything you can, you know, to help Estonia to become the member of the European family, the NATO family, and then of course when you look around the world, you know, everywhere, you know, there are these human rights violations, and democracy is at stake, and that has given me the power to choose this career and to continue here, and also being here in Kyiv. And all these news or the brutal attacks or the sleepless nights, I'm telling everybody that it only gives me strength or this anger, or, you know, to do more. What can we do more for Ukraine? And of course, my family in Estonia, my son, he's 22. He's studying in university, but he's also a member of the Defense League. So, you know, we understand that we need to be ready to protect our country as much as possible.
When I say the words freedom and democracy, what images do they conjure in your mind, and what do the concepts mean to you?
They mean everything, to be honest. Especially freedom. I mean, it's not the freedom, I don't know, to go to the street, or freedom to buy a coffee, but it's really, I think it's all what life is about. And if you don't have it, or if you have to fight for it, you understand. And even here in Ukraine, last summer when we had these huge electricity cuts, and well, basically I didn't have electricity at home for months. And then you realize that with all this resilience, and Ukraine is, you know, I mean, the Kyiv is free, and, you know, it's not occupied, and you can go outside and buy a coffee. This is a freedom. And you can really speak freely that Russia is committing war crimes, and freedom is all.
What image does it bring to your mind when I say those things? Is there anything from your career, from your background?
It brings me image from 19th, when Estonians, brave Estonians, started to bring out the Estonian flags. And when we had this song, it wasn't even a festival, but like hundreds of thousands of people gathered, and we sang all these songs, despite we still had the Soviet occupation, and I always remember this. My parents went to these festivals, and when we had this Baltic chain, Estonia, I was there. I was 12 years old. I remember I had tears in my eyes, although, you know, I was just a kid, but still. And when I'm thinking, this image is coming to me, that after this I haven't lived before that in free country. And when you understand that you can really be free, then these images come to my mind all the time.
You've mentioned music, and you mentioned it twice. Estonia's revolution and its independence from the Soviet Union, as you said, it was characterized by music.
Yes.
And you have Laulupida, and that seems to embody this. But what role does music and art have to play in defending and struggling for freedom and democracy, in your eyes?
A huge role, actually, because through the songs and art, and you can express your values. And we were also lucky during the Soviet times that our composers and writers, they could write in a way that the Russian, the Soviet Union, who always proofread, they couldn't understand the nuances. And so you can really, still pass on this. And like my father or my mother used to read me some books and saying that this actually, if you think deeper, it means this and that. So it has been really important for Estonia. And also in 1918, and we had also the writers and all this intellectual part of Estonia who were really for the independence, and I think it's in our blood.
Music is wonderful.
And I think it's also, if you're a small country, then you have your own language, and through songs and everything, and you just keep it alive, and maybe it's also because of that.
In this time of darkness for so many people, whether it's in Kyiv over the last 3 nights, in Tallinn, or in Washington itself, what gives you hope?
In Estonia, when I cross the border, I always, I drive from Ukraine to Estonia. When I cross the border to Estonia, I see Estonian flag, and I see the sign, Republic of Estonia. That gives me strength. And also, so many Estonians are supporting Ukraine, and you can see Ukrainian flags also in everywhere, and that gives me the hope. And here, like you said, we had 3 very difficult nights in a row, and even if I'm at shelter or home shelter, I'm still worrying about Ukrainians, because there are so many people who don't have shelter. They don't have metros, and also, of course, my people. But then the morning comes, and even if it's not sunny, but you see, people are coming to the streets. They go to the cafeterias, and it really gives me this hope that it's amazingly resilient country, and they still. I know a couple of Ukrainian friends who go every day to this special cafeteria because they want to support that the owner of the cafeteria keeps it open, because it's like it's a sign of hope, even this small thing.
What advice do you have for a young person who wants to enter a career in foreign service from any of the democratic countries?
Of course, you have to love your country a lot. You have to have this patriotism, because it's not always very easy to work in foreign service, because you have to negotiate. I've also negotiated with the Russian Federation several agreements, and you have to also understand the balance between diplomacy and or just being able to say to the other side what you exactly mean. But I think it's really, you have to have the will to support your country, to make it more prosperous, and to be able to make your small country known around the world. And you have to have this fire inside you. And I see in Estonia, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is one of these ministries where the people, I mean, the personnel is quite stable, because when you already enter that, so you are a fan, and you stay there, and and of course we have many. When we regained independence in 1991, we had many patriots coming to the Foreign Service, and also many foreign Estonians who came back from States, and they showed you this example, and they taught us, and so this all gives you this flame that they had this fire in their eyes. And of course there were difficult times. We were also not welcome to the NATO in the beginning, or the European Union, but we had these people, and I try to also tell the younger generation that you have to have it, and you have to learn also from the history and from the past. And
do you have hope for the younger generation?
Yes, I do. I absolutely do. When I look at the young people here, when I look at the young people in Europe, in Estonia, definitely. I just hope that the war will be over here, that Russia will be defeated, and then the young generation of Ukraine can start rebuilding, of course with the help of everybody. I do have hope.
My final question, thank you so much for your time. Do you have a message to send to the dictators and the authoritarians of the world?
Yes, they will have their hour, and Hague is waiting for them.
This has been Why We Fight. If you enjoyed the program, please consider subscribing to this show or financially supporting my work by following the Patreon or Buy Me a Coffee links below. For my written work and commentary, then check out my Substack, Dictators v Democrats. If you want to join a community of those who believe that democracy is worth fighting for, then feel free to join the Dictators v Democrats Discord server, which is also linked below. And remember, democracy is non-negotiable.